There are some excellent paints in this range. I bought 8 of them on the spot. There are also some oddities in there, which are maybe a bit too niche. And some I just don't see the point, there's better alternatives out there. A huge thank you to the folks over at Factorum for letting me use their incredible gaming space to test out this new range of contrast paints. Now, let's talk about it. Number 1, Doomfire Magenta. Let's start with a bang. This is one of my favourite colours in the whole range. That's not a surprise because magenta is one of my favourite colours, even though it doesn't really exist. And if you want to have a fun conversation, talk to me about that in the comments. It's a massive, bold, bright hue that leaps from whatever you paint it on. Its high saturation means it covers well, and it dries with a flat, even consistency, which, thinking about it, isn't very contrasty. What I mean by that is, it's unlike how the range was marketed. It doesn't really pool in the recesses and leave the highlights highlighted. I mean, it does, but not to the level you'd expect. Instead, it behaves like a really easy to apply base layer, and that's why I love it. Like all the paints I'm going to talk about today, the consistency is just perfect. You can apply it easily with a brush, or drop it straight into an airbrush. They wet blend really well, and best of all, they're quick and easy to apply. My previous go-to pink was Volupus Pink, but this one knocks that one out of the park. It's even brighter, and it'll be an excellent addition to my Synthwave Stormcast. However you react to contrast paints and their various counterparts will depend on how you paint. It's an individual thing after all. My typical process is to prime a miniature black, then Zenith will highlight it in white, block out the colours, and then refine. For that, I tend to prefer paints that I can put in place, and then they stay there. But I do like to apply paints quickly, so colours I can just drop straight into an airbrush that I can apply in less coats will always get a big tick from me. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is, like most paints and tools, everyone will use them in a slightly different way. It doesn't really matter, one's not better than the other, it just depends on the end result. At the end of the day, you do you. Now from the heady heights of Doomfire Magenta to the other end, black. Now don't get me wrong here, this is a great paint. It covers well, it should do, it's a black paint, it also applies well, covering well in one coat, and its consistency is excellent. The problem is, it's just a thin black paint. There are loads of excellent black paints out there, and they're significantly cheaper than this one. The one I reviewed from Golden, for example, is just as good as this one. Chimeras Black, equally as good. Now, if your choice is Citadel or Citadel, this black is the best black in the range. Hands down. However, if you have access to almost any other range, I would say grab their black instead. Number 2, Sigvold Burgundy. Bracketing Volupus Pink with Doomfire Magenta on the other side is Sigvold Burgundy. A deep wine red pink colour that, much like the magenta, covers easily and applies well. I can see this being my go-to for rich, deep cloaks for the foreseeable future. But you can also use it on alien creatures, the recesses of skin, particularly mouths, where it will really work to give you that pop you really need. Incredible stuff. And talking of incredible, thank you so much for watching. If you've got a few seconds, make sure you like the video and comment down below. The more interactions and the more watch times videos like this get, the more YouTube promotes it to other people. Thanks a lot. Permit me to be a little fickle here, because on the face of it, this green pulls in the recesses and generally behaves like a contrast paint should behave, which I'm well aware I said I just didn't like. But I'm also a sucker for bright colours, and the first time I saw this painted over a white base, I knew I needed it. It's not only great for green Eldari, it's going to be incredible for plasma glows and OSL too, as well as adding much needed luminosity to orc skin or lizard men. Number 4, Croxie Gore scales. Talking about lizard men, Seraphon, has there ever been a more perfect colour combo than pink and teal? Croxie Gore is that perfect shade for all your little magic dinosaurs. But it's also a neat recess shade if you want to make your Alpha Legion or Sons of Horus, or even Ultramarines, really pop with a little bit of interest. So at this point you can probably guess I'm more interested in the bright, popping shades in the range, and I've steered away from the browns and the greys. That's not because they're not great paints, it's just not really how I paint. When I want to paint more realistic things, I tend to default more to my Pro Acryls or Chimeras or Vallejos, and stick to a more traditional workup, but that's on me. Number 5, Baal Red. Baal Red is the closest thing to Mephiston Red in the entire contrast range, and Mephiston Red is the best paint that Citadel make. Team it up with Flesh Tearers Red in the shadows and you have yourself the perfect Blood Angels workup. I'm in the middle of painting up my Blood Angels as we speak, and honestly, obviously, being a bright, bold, one-coat contrast paint that dries flat with a nice consistency, it has lots of other uses too, but I'll leave that up to your imagination. Number 6. Magma Droth Flame. Now, the first time I attempted to use this paint, I didn't shake the pot and it came out sort of a salmony colour. It actually took me a little while to work out what I'd done, but I decided to give it a go because so many other content creators absolutely love this colour, and I can see why. Look at that fiery, beautiful, flat orange colour. Really difficult to achieve. Honestly, I'm not sure what I'm going to use it for, but I really love that colour. And finally, let's talk about the jewel in the crown, the yellows. As with all the other contrast paints, these dry to be a flat, smooth consistency straight out of the pot. And similarly to all the other contrast paints I like, they're a one-coat, relatively opaque paint. But we've got a double whammy here. Depending on what your preference is, you can either go for the slightly warmer tones of Imperial Fist or the cooler tones of Bad Moon Yellow. That Imperial Fist, what a paint. Smooth coverage with a tiny hint of pooling in the recesses give you an absolutely gorgeous yellow tone. If you prefer your yellows more cooler and acid yellow, then Bad Moon Yellow is the colour for you. In my mind, this is pretty much the perfect contrast paint. Anything that you need to base in a smooth yellow, this is an absolute monster of a paint. So there you have it. The contrast range. Updated and reviewed in all its glory. As ever, they aren't the only options out there. There's plenty of other paints and brands, and I'd encourage you to shop around and look at your options too. Work out what paint works best for you and your painting style. The closest to contrast in my current painting setup are gold and high flow acrylics, and if you want to find out more about those paints, you can click on this video here. Thanks so much.